Hey everyone, it's Luke Jam from Safety Wise. Welcome to another episode of Conversations for Change. In this podcast today, I'm going to be interviewing Jes Urquhart. Jes, just for everyone's benefit, where are you calling in from?
Dubbo, New South Wales.
Beautiful, Dubbo. I must admit, I've never been to Dubbo. It is on my list of places to go to. How's the weather today?
Beautiful. About 24 degrees. Lovely.
Awesome. I had the heater on a short while ago. It's been a really cold day. It's been really weird. We've had tops of 31 and then it's been dropping down again. Thanks for joining us. Let's have a talk. Let's talk about your journey in safety. So just for everyone's benefit, just give us a bit of a background to you and your background and experience.
Thanks, Luke. I started in safety over almost 25 years ago at CSA Mine in Cobar, and started that as a mine clerk and had a bit of a penchant for safety and training, and ended up in a role. So I was very, very lucky. And baptism by fire, just got thrown in the deep end from that point.
It seems everyone I talk to, not just in these podcasts, but it seems everyone is thrown in the deep end. Like it is sink or swim. Seems to be the way we do it.
Yeah. I don't think I've been in any roles where I've walked in and the system's there, everything's going good. It's usually pretty hands-on deck.
For sure. Now, your background now and your experience, it's actually in risk. So just for everyone's benefit, let's assume that we don't understand the difference. What is the difference between, I guess, what I'm going to call traditional safety versus risk and the stuff that you specialize in?
Yeah. So unlike frontline safety, getting out with the workforce and implementing controls, that type of thing, risk management's really strategic and looking at the catastrophic risks, the fatal risks, whether you're doing bow ties or another method, but really, really looking at what can go wrong from a preventing point of view, as opposed to after an event.
Yep. Okay. So just for your benefit and everyone's, throughout this conversation, probably just out of habit, I'm going to keep referring to the safety industry. I'm going to encapsulate your risk background in that, so I might use the terms interchangeably. It's interesting, you just mentioned bow tie. A number of years ago, I worked for a fertilizer manufacturer and we were dealing with things like ammonium nitrates and that sort of stuff. And we undertook some bow ties. I thought we had pretty good systems in place. Then we did the bow ties and we were specifically looking at events that were going to create a multi-fatality event. Not a single, it had to be a multi, and that's what we looked at. And it was an absolute eye-opener. I was quite fascinated by that process. Do you find that's fairly common?
Yeah, it is. I think when people actually start to get down and understand the causes, and that we're controlling causes, not controlling the event or controlling the outcomes, we're actually line by line controlling those triggers and those causes that can lead into an event. So I do think a lot of people step back and a bit blown away by the process.
Mm. Yeah, it was definitely, for me, it was an absolute eye-opener. It was no different years ago. I worked with a gas company, and it was the first time I had exposure to process safety. And again, it's a whole other specialist field in its own right. And again, that was an eye-opener for me as well, no different to the bow ties and the multi-fatalities. And I think certainly for me with that fertilizer, a company, I was very much on the hands-on operational side of the business. We were looking at front-end loaders, forklifts, manual handling, dangerous goods and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, and as I said, we thought we had really good systems and stuff in place, and we did overall. But yeah, when you really started looking at those high consequence events, and as I said, this one multi-fatality, wow,
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
changed my perspective on everything. Yeah. So you said that you were in mining and got into a safety role. How did that come about? So it wasn't safety you were doing. You're in like an administration type role or something, was it?
Yeah, so I was a mine clerk and for the mine manager in the technical services team, and absolutely fascinated. And I spent a lot of time with the drill and blast engineers and the surveyors and the geologists, and and then just sort of ended up helping out in the safety and training, and I just absolutely loved it. So it's haven't changed much since then. Still love it.
So you did say sink or swim earlier on. How did you navigate that? Like not only mining's a tough industry. There's no two ways about it, and again loaded with loads of risks and high risks and so forth, and very diverse range of risks. But how do you sink or swim? How do you swim when you've had no experience?
I think with really good leadership, and I did have some great leadership at the time. And I remember we had a Simba drill rig coming onto site, and it came on with no training packages, no one trained in the use of it. It was coming on Christmas Eve or something like that. So it was like, Jess, we've got a week to go. We've got to write this training package for this drill rig. So, and I think I was down at the Sandvik yard in Cobar and trying to get photos and doing things like that. So it was just had to get it done. We had a due date, and so that was probably one of my very first sink or swim projects, and which was really interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So from there, what was your first formal round of training you did in the safety or risk space?
I think I did a Cert 4 in training and assessing 2004, I think I want to say, and that got into that training. I didn't do any formal safety training until maybe 6 or 7 years in, when I did a Cert 4 in I was probably OH&S back then. And lots of different little courses. Every time there was a course come up, I'd jump in on it and listen to thousands of hours of webinars and over the years. Always learning.
I think that's yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a definite advantage. If we talk about people that are looking to get into the industry now or new to the industry, there's so much that's at our fingertips. I could look back like you. I didn't have any formal safety training when I got into my first formal role. I was doing fire safety auditing, and I was literally trained on the job to do that, and auditing against building codes and that sort of stuff. And I loved it. I loved the job. It was fantastic, and great exposure. But yeah, we didn't have access to all the online training and podcasts and videos and all the other stuff. And we're talking to the old Nokia phones and the old flip phones and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think there's some really good stuff out there even now, for people to get into. So let's talk about that for a minute. Is there a go-to podcast or video series or something, or books that you go to now when you're looking for stuff?
Yeah, I love Dr. Sean Brady, his podcasts and his webinars. I think looking at the Pike River disaster, and I can't think of the name of the bridge, but what went wrong, and going back and actually looking at that. And he actually did the Brady review, and that was looking into 20 years of mining fatalities. And so, yeah, always my go-to for material and podcasts.
Yeah, for sure. What's changed for you? Again, if we look at sort of where you started, right back in that first job in Cobar to where you are now, what's been the biggest change you've seen in the industry?
Oh, there's probably so many. I think the over complexity. I think that's probably changed. I think we've got so many laws and regulations and compliance items, and then you got if you're working for big companies, you've got corporate then auditing you to within an inch of your lives. And I think it's gotten a lot of over complex, if I can say that.
Yeah. What do you think's created that? I agree with you, I got to be honest, I'm glad I'm not safety advising and a safety manager now. I just don't think I've got the patience for it. I really don't. What do you think's created that?
I don't know. I do think there's a lot of paper controls where if we've got ISO certifications,
my favourite topic.
ISO certifications, we've got auditing against this and that, and yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's a comfort in businesses to go, we've done all these audits, we've done all these things, we're compliant, and yeah. And then if you get a new safety manager in or a new management team in, want to change to their systems and going through complex changes as well. So we see that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I said half jokingly, it's my favourite topic. I've done a few social things now. We've got to talk about the care, cover ass, retain employment. And I think we're really good in the safety industry at using paperwork to cover ass. And I've got to be honest, I really question the value of so much paperwork that we're generating now. And I see numerous posts on social media. People are saying, I don't get to go out in the shop floor. I'm stuck behind a desk. So wrong. Yeah. How important is that for you? Like, how do you balance the paperwork? I mean, risk is, let's face it, is about paperwork and so forth versus the safety and the operational safety. How do you juggle that? How do you manage that?
When I was in frontline safety roles, I would be really conscious to, if anyone came to my door and wanted me to go and have a look at something, to actually just get away from my desk, go and have a look, because I think there's a lot of perception in safety where and risk, where people sort of see what they see and whether they understand the risks or not. So it's really important to go out and actually have a look at what they're looking at. And yeah, you do get bogged down.
Absolutely.
You do get bogged down with paperwork and trying to get it all done, but it's just huge amount of paperwork.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I get lynched by anyone who's listening, I absolutely understand that paperwork's necessary for the role. 100% I do. But I just think sometimes, I think this is where that workers imagined kicks in. We've got all these amazing documents and plans and stuff like that, but they just sit on shelves. What value is it actually adding?
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't to me. You would see it yourself, with investigations. We've got processes and procedures that are out of date. And I know you've been working on some fairly big ones with safety-wise over the last few months and got some great procedures, but were they implemented? Not really. No. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? What do you think's the biggest misconception people have about the safety profession?
I think there's a misconception that we're just sort of hated. But, if you're comfortable with that, coming into a business and knowing you're not going to be the favourite person, and then actually just working towards trust and integrity and building relationships. But I think when if people are walking in and looking for that sort of superior, I'm the safety person, that might be a bit of a letdown when you need to be in a really support role, not as much as the boss, the policeman sort of role.
Yeah, it comes up every time. Every podcast, people are talking now about that safety cop mentality. It's out there. I was one of them. I was terrible for it when I came into the profession. I will admit that. It took me years to see it though.
Yeah.
A lot of belly button gazing, and I don't even remember what the trigger was. But one day I just sort of woke up and thought, doing this wrong.
Yeah.
It's an eye opener. You talked earlier about having a good manager in that first role. So how important is it to have a mentor?
So important. I think whether it's just to give you some clarity or direction, and I do think we do get very overwhelmed in safety roles. There's 15 things going on, and that's just before breakfast. And just to have someone to help you, just to help to rationalise what's important. We do get into that triage phase where we've got 15 things at our doorstep, and we do need to choose what's important and where we can put our resources and the time for the day. So I think having someone that has the experience and that you don't have to learn from mistakes and all those types of things, where you can actually get that guidance.
Absolutely. So given that, and I know I'm focusing a bit about when you started in the role, but that is a key part of the reason for these podcasts. How do you handle imposter syndrome? Like, it's really easy to sit there and say, I don't know that. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. How do you handle that?
With a lot of self-awareness, I think, knowing that I'm not going to know everything when I walk into a room. There's industries and there's specialties and there's different things that I don't know. So I do try and seek to find out as much as I can. But there is also a fine line when you're facilitating risk assessments, particularly bow tie, where as a facilitator, you do have to draw out some information from people, but there is that grey area where people go, why is she here? She doesn't know anything. But to be able to pull back and say, okay, I know roughly what we're doing, but I just need you to say it. So I think that's a little bit where you can put yourself in imposter syndrome just by being a good facilitator, and then walk out the door and people are wondering why you were there in the first place. So yeah, having a good balance of asking people the right questions and making sure that you do arm yourself up with enough information when you walk in a room.
Yeah, for sure. Ironically, Sam Lloyd and I were talking about that in last week's podcast when we recorded that. And as Sam said, there's some smart people in the room. You need to lean into that. You've got your area of expertise. They've got their area of expertise. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You can't be everything to everyone. You're not the expert in everything, and you've got to recognize that, don't you? Yeah. What do you think's been the most powerful lesson you've learned from an incident that you've either been directly involved in or investigated or whatever it may be?
I think there's been a few big ones where there's been way too much assumption in, whether it's a rescue capability or an assumption in the frontline workers are going to know what to do when things start to go wrong and they're going to be able to troubleshoot. So I think we do have a lot of assumptions. And as an auditor, if I was to go out and say, okay, show me, I'm not very confident at all that people are actually going to, in the front line, are actually going to know what the documents are, what the procedures are, what the emergency processes are. So I think that's probably one of my biggest learnings.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of that. So talking about that, how do you measure a good culture, in your opinion, a good safety culture?
I think when there's that in anticipation, and you could sort of go back into that chronic unease type. But when people are sort of anticipating and looking out for each other, and I do see a lot of camaraderie in underground mining, not coal mining, but probably more so metalliferous mining, where there's so much camaraderie. They're actually looking after each other. They're hanging out on days off, whereas in other businesses, sometimes you don't see that. So people aren't caring as much, like not openly caring about each other. So I think a really good sign of a good culture is that caring.
Yeah, for sure. If you were to go back to that first safety role, what's the one bit of advice you'd give yourself?
Don't take anything to heart. And when you're in that first safety role, you're sort of showing up with your undies on the outside and going to save the world, going to do this change, put this in, I'm going to do everything. But it's a really just step back, zoom out, eat an elephant one bite at a time, and don't overpromise. And spend a lot of time on building those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier in one of your responses, you talked a bit about ethics and morals and so forth. What's that mean for you when we talk safety and risk?
I think, are you talking about in terms of workers or companies?
Yeah, well, for you, how do you manage ethics and morals in what you're doing? Ethics is always going to be a challenge, I think, for the safety industry. How do you manage that? How do you recognise it as an issue? How do you manage it?
I've never actually thought about that. I think because, morally and for every fibre of my being, I'm looking after workers. So if I say I'm going to show up to a meeting, I'm at the meeting. If I'm going to have something done, you sort of jump in and do it. I don't know. It's hard to explain when I'm like that. So when you're looking at other people, it's about, and with the overpromising as well. I did have a leader, an amazing manager years ago, and I actually had to speak to her and say, I'm a yes girl and I'm going to jump in and do everything you ask me to do. But I need you to understand that I'll end up with a bit of burnout, or I'm going to end up, because I've always got to, get it done on time, do it perfectly, always be the one that does it. And it burns you out. So making sure everyone's on the same page with what your morals and what your values are, so that you don't end up trying to do everything.
Have you had a situation where you thought this doesn't sit right? How did you handle it?
Yeah, so I did have a site that I was at. Very, very poor culture, really, really poor management, and tried to negotiate, tried to get in and say, how about we try this, or how about we try that? We're not going to be able to get it right perfectly today, but how about we try and do a few things. And I think in the end, I ended up leaving that business because there was so much that needed to be done from that culture, that HR type point of view, that anything I did on a safety basis wouldn't have stuck. It wouldn't have made a difference. So I think that was a bit hard to walk away from that business.
It's an interesting point. And I've been in the exact same situation. I think there comes a time where you just think, I can't keep doing this. Like there's only so much I can do. And unless the business steps up and starts doing stuff and taking things seriously, you've got to protect yourself, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned burnout and preventing burnout. What's your go-to? How do you prevent burnout?
My thing that empties my cup is driving. So going on road trips. So I'm really fortunate that with the work I do, I'm in my car a lot and traveling. So I do get a lot of chance to listen to my podcasts and to go on my little road trips and yeah, that's just what keeps me going, recharges me.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, I relate to that. Mine's driving and riding my trike, that sort of stuff. Um, Danny, my business partner, knows what damn well when I've been on the trike because I'll ring her. I've got an idea. Have you been riding again? Okay.
Do your best thinking
Yeah, I
when you're
totally get it.
behind the wheel.
Yeah, look, I agree. Yeah, you absolutely do, and I think it's important. I have said previously, I'm an introvert, extrovert, so I extrovert for work, but I need that recharge time. I need that downtime, and if I don't, I will burn out.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
and
one hundred
sleep.
percent.
I know when I need sleep, and my family knows, and it's just 7 o'clock at night. I'm off to bed. Let me sleep a
Are you a bear with a sore head
little bit.
when it comes to sleep? Yeah, I can relate. And
Yeah.
my kids say the same. Um, absolutely. How do you when we talk about incidents that you've been involved in, how do you control your emotions? When you're investigating or when you're the safety advisor or safety manager, how do you control that? That's a tough call.
Yeah, I think that was something that I learned, and again, really good leadership and good people around me that can actually say, "Hang on, come out here for a second and have a chat," and just say, "Okay, calm down," And yeah, I think there's just a lot of years and a lot of watching other managers. I think in situations where when you see other people really stand up in an incident and they're communicating well and they're empathetic and really delivering that message and compassionate, I think they're the ones that you sort of look at and go, that's what I'll try and be like. And so really learning from others.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, how do you, in your experience, how do you start shifting culture? I mean, we talked about that one you walked away from. Let's park that. I mean, that I think everyone at some stage in their career will be confronted with that situation. But how do you start the process of changing culture? What's your experiences there?
So I think when you're talking to workers and to get a feel of how they've been let down, whether it's this is our third management team, this is our third trying to roll out a safety system, this is, they're not listening to us. I think it's really understanding what they need because at the end of the day, it's their that's their culture. And you sort of can't walk in and throw out a few surveys and say, "Oh no, here's the culture." You need to listen to the workers, and you need to really get in and understand what they've been let down by before.
So let's go a bit further up the food chain. How do you handle and shift culture with leadership, the executives, boards, that sort of thing? Let's face it, they control the purse strings and everything else.
Yeah, yeah. I think that empathy and the compassion and the showing the data and when you're going through and doing an analysis and saying here's all the near misses and here's all the smaller incidents, and then actually doing that bit of education to actually turn around and say we don't need to spend $15 million. This is how we can sort of roll things out. So actually going to management with a plan, not just a problem, I think helps.
You've just stolen my next question. So I was basically going to ask that exact thing. How do you balance, business needs like budgets and that sort of stuff when you've got some serious compliance issues? I mean, we talked about multi-fatality events earlier. How do you juggle that?
I think it's like I said earlier, it's a bit of triage. It's what can we do right now? What do we need money for? What can we do with the resources that we've already got? And how do we use those resources again without burning other people out? And to actually get what we need, and then also negotiating too. I've worked with lots of businesses with the corporate and they've got hard deadlines and things like that, and it's about going back to them and saying, hey, we've got other things on, so okay if we take a bit more time to do this, or and just making sure that we're not over
Yeah,
promising.
yeah, for sure. Now that you're consulting and working across multiple industries, how do you change your approach based on the different industries? Does it change?
A little bit. I think if I'm going and doing some work with mining, companies, you can just straight up be at level 10 talking about critical controls and CCVs and CCEs and those types of things. But I think when if you're working with local governments or smaller businesses, it's really, you don't talk that language. You don't you talk about what's important. What are the controls that are implemented in the workers? We're talking about line by line on swims, whereas in mining, you're not talking to that level. It's really talking about control verification and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So how do you make safety and risk not a tick box exercise?
It has to become part of what we do. And you see that a lot where businesses go, risk management is at the base of everything we do, and it makes you giggle because it's like, is it though? Are people talking about risk and safety the same way that we expect them to? I had a general manager years ago who said, I've got a challenge for you, Jess. I want my leaders to talk like you. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. How do I do that? So it was quite good that, after a year and doing lots of facilitating of bow ties and risk assessments, that you'd walk past an office and you'd hear one of the managers in the talking to their teams, and they're saying, "Oh, that's not critical," or that, and it's just starting to use the words that we use. So I think that was quite an achievement.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? What's your biggest non-negotiable for you when it comes to safety and risk?
I think that supervision, that sort of level with young workers and workers that don't know things, and I think supervision and training. And while those things are, you don't really write them into risk assessments as controls. I do think we overlook that a lot, and I do think we need to sort of step back and say, what's our control? The person's experienced, the person's being supervised. We've had a toolbox talk on that control implementation or whatever the case is, but I think we just overlook a lot of that frontline, on the job, on the day stuff.
So with your experience, how do you define acceptable risk? I mean, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot in safety. What's acceptable? How do you define that for you?
Acceptable, I think, is working in the presence of hazards. So we accept that we're driving road trains. We have to drive them on the road. We've got whole industries that are doing that. That's the acceptance, I think, is we do have to work with this, but we do have to, and if you talk about the legislation and getting the risks down to as low as practical sort of thing, and it's about just pushing and getting better and better and better at our controls, and making sure we're reviewing them regularly and what's changed and those types of things. But I think the acceptance, we can't just say we accept fatalities. Like we can't say that. We've got to say we accept that we work with that hazard, but we don't accept the injuries. We don't accept the illness and the fatalities.
So how do you balance productivity and protection? So how do you balance that?
I think having everyone on the same page, and and I think when you've got management that have been through fatalities and they've been through serious incidents, they get it. And when you say, hey, we just need to do some training. No, we've got to be out there working at 7 a.m. Everyone's got to be out there. And you say, give me half an hour, because the difference is you're going to send all these people out here to this high risk area. No one's read the swims. No one's had the inductions. No one's had any training. This little stop for 10, 15 minutes could be the difference between you shutting down for the next 3 weeks. So just put that in perspective, that we're not asking you to tools down for 2 weeks. We're just asking for 15 minutes with your workers.
It's funny. It's actually a very similar response to what Sam gave me last week. He's working on his last project was something like a $350 million project. And we talked about that exact thing. And he said, you've just got to present it in such a way. If we don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And this is the outcome. You're going to stop work for X number of days, weeks, whatever. It's an interesting one. It's good to hear you say that. What's your take on the risk matrix or matrices? Are they useful? Are they outdated? Do you think there's issues? Oh, you laugh then. For those that are listening to audio, you probably want to watch the video because there was a very distinct reaction just then.
Visceral.
Talk to me about the risk matrix. What was that? I missed that.
I said a visceral reaction. Look, I think the risk matrix is a good tool. I do think we lose a lot of events by people ranking them so low, and they're doing that through likelihood. So if you've got someone in the room that says there's no way on earth we'd have a driver fall asleep, never ever, then low, it's off the risk register, and that scares me as a safety professional. And when you're looking at a risk matrix and it's got pretty colours and everything, and you've got your catastrophic events, and over the likelihood you've got low, medium, all the way. When I look at that, I say to businesses, so you've accepted, even though it's rare, you've accepted a multiple fatality event because it's low now. And you've accepted that. And that has no risk treatment plans. It's got no controls required, no management approval, because you've said it's low now because it was rare. And that rare isn't control verification. It's not a you can't change a residual risk score with two documents. It's verify that those controls are in place, and then we can look at the change in the risk score. But I don't know. I don't think we use the risk matrix very well, and I think we've moved a lot in, especially in mining, where we're looking at potential maximum consequence. We're just looking at we don't really look at our likelihood. We basically say, does this event have the potential to kill multiple people? Likelihood, yeah. That's something that we're not going to sit around in a room and argue about.
But you'd also have the total opposite, wouldn't you? Someone will die. I mean, I could walk across the road and trip over and smack my head in the gutter and die. So do I not walk across the road anymore? How do we manage that?
Yeah, yeah. And I teach the health and safety rep course, and we do a whole day on risk management. And, to be able to get, and this is talking to non sort of safety people too. These are operator guys that have been elected as the safety reps. And to actually explain that, to say, a paper cut could result in a infection and someone could die, but this is not what we're doing. We're going to end up throwing money, resources at things that aren't reality. So it's really finding that what is our likely consequence from that. So, and you can get data for that. If you had a fall from a metre, you might likely have a fracture. If you had a fall from 3 meters, you can likely have neck injuries, back injuries, head injuries, could be a fatality. So really go out and understand the data that's sitting behind those likelihoods.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've said to people over the years, particularly with their risk matrix, is, or more so their definitions, we're trying to make them fit everything. And I've said to a lot of people, you need a definition for, perhaps life safety. You perhaps need a definition for enviro incidents. You need a definition for business risk, business continuity, loss of production versus a loss of life, like two very different things, but could have significant impact on the business in different ways, can't it?
That's right. And you see also when the businesses, no, we're only having one matrix, and they get so hung up on that. And, because it's such a big business, they've got this little category for financial, where you've got to lose $85 million for it to even register on the risk register. And you've got this little site here that $1 million is going to shut them down. They're done. They can't afford $1 million production loss. So, I don't think we apply that well. I don't think we have that flexibility where we say, we do need a different risk matrix. They're different businesses. They're different risk appetites. And, going to this one template is a bit... doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't. No, I agree with you. Slightly different vein, but similar. When Danny and I bought Safety Wise, we did a full review of the business, and part of that included our insurance coverage. And what we thought we were covered for was very different to what we were actually covered for. And so much of it came down to how things were defined. And you were spot on in what you just said, a loss of income, a loss of production, take a major mining company, take Glencore, for example. If a Glencore site shut down or part of their site shut down, it's a big organization. That's not $1 million in a day. That's probably, I don't know, it's probably $1 million in an hour or more that they're losing. And suddenly you look at it and go, oh, that's big. You got to get this right.
Yeah.
Crazy. How do you make sure that risk controls that we talk about and implement are actually workable in real life. And again, I think this comes down to this work as done, work as normal, work as imagined. But it's fine to sit there on paper and say we're going to do ABC. How do you as a risk manager make sure that they actually work?
I think that's just being out on site and talking to workers, and and we do see that with the critical risk programs and critical control programs, where those frontline workers, they need to know what their critical control is. And and a lot of the time they know. They know that they have to wear a harness if they're working over a certain height, or they have to have a gas detector in certain areas that they're going into. But to actually get them on the job to say, talk me through that. What do you do if it's that reading? What do you do if that's different? What do we do if things go wrong? Because I think there's just, like I said, so much paperwork, and there's so much assumption that our frontline workers have read that 85-page document. They haven't. I'm going to say that they haven't. They haven't read it. They haven't even read the swims that they signed on to for the day in a lot of cases. So I think it's that supervision. It's getting out there and verifying that those controls are in place and they're effective.
Absolutely. Let's pick up on what you just said about swims. We've got take fives, take twos, we've got JSAs, we've got swims. What else? JHAs. I can't remember what else we've got. Have we gone too far? Is it counterproductive in your experience?
No, I think they're good. When you're sitting down and you're doing, you're right, there's so many different variations. There's racks, there's, JSAs, JHAEAs. But I think when they actually are used in the purpose that they were designed for. So, if we've got a procedure that we do, something's different, and that's when we do a risk assessment or a JSA to say something's slightly different here. We've done it now 3 times, so let's write it back into our procedures. So I don't think people apply these tools properly. I've seen a lot of businesses have swims for non-construction work. So I think we've diluted what a swims should be for. And then when you look at them, they're 56 pages and they're every hazard known to that business, and it's got nothing to do with the job on the day. But again, I think they, in their minds, they think they're compliant and we've got everything there. But again, your workers haven't read it. And I think that's where we lose the translation.
Look, I can't preach that one enough. Whether it's a JSA, swims, whatever, they're very much task specific. It's about using the ladder on this site, doing this job. And I've been on the receiving end, as you said, where I've been handed these multi-page documents and go, well, that's not relevant, that's not relevant, that's not relevant. Oh, here's the section I need, but it's still not relevant to our site or how we're doing or what we're doing. It's just relevant about using ladders in general, for example. And I think that's a massive issue for us that we've got to overcome. Do you think the regulators have inadvertently pushed that because they're just pushing people so hard to do this sort of paperwork? And I'm not saying the paperwork's not relevant, don't misinterpret me, but do you think we've created a beast? We've created a monster?
Yeah, kind of. I think when the regulations called for swims for high risk activities, I think that was very warranted, and I think for what they were. But I think potentially to come back and say, hang on, guys, we didn't actually need a swims for sweeping a floor. We needed a swims for working at height and for working in that confined space. So I think the regulators are probably coming back out there and communicating that a bit better now, to actually educate and say, we can't run our business on swims. Where's your procedures? Where's your actual risk assessments? Swims didn't just the magic that came in and fixed everything.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the one message you just find yourself constantly repeating in your role?
The risk hazard, people don't understand. And I think in some situations we can't even explain what a risk is, or we can't actually explain what a hazard is. So I think what we're constantly coming back down to is just keeping it simple. And, when I'm doing training as well and saying, hey, we're going to do the next 3 days on risk management, but before I start, when you're working on, you're cooking and you see that the kids are running around and you put the pot handle to the back, that's risk management. In workplaces, obviously a little bit more complex, and we do have to document some things, but essentially we need to know what's going to hurt us, and then we need to know what controls. But then we need those controls to work anytime. It doesn't matter who's standing in there cooking. doesn't matter what we're cooking, we just need to make sure that that thing's done every time.
Yep.
And because I do think we've overcooked it, we've overcomplicated what a hazard is,
It's an interesting point. I was involved in some online discussions a little while ago, and someone put up a scenario in this Facebook group. And the scenario revolved around some pipes that were stacked up vertically. Someone was nearby, the pipes moved, they fell, they struck the person. And this safety professional, inverted commas, kept referring to this as a near miss incident. I'm going, it's not a near miss, dude. They were struck. And I think you're spot on. We've got to get the definitions right, don't we? We've got to have a clear understanding of what a near miss is versus an incident and that sort of stuff. And until we as a profession can get that right, we're always going to be behind the eight ball. Easy. So how do you encourage honest reporting in your teams? I mean, we talk about, lots of people talk about zero harm and that sort of stuff, and a lot of people will argue zero harm can create a culture of zero reporting. So, because we don't want to be that person that's going to break the record, we'd hate to be the one that breaks that 300-day streak of no injuries. So how do we get honest reporting? How do you do it?
I think it's just and look, I've been lucky. I've been in organisations that have got good reporting, and I've seen some good changes through some businesses where they've just gone out, and it's just through training, through face-to-face, getting those definitions right. And creating a safe space where people firstly have a mechanism to report it. There's a system or there's something that they can report it to, and that it's not stupid. There's no vilification for that. If you've got something that you think is a hazard, but then also training people too, that we don't just sort of go, oh, there's a hazard, I'm going to report it. 99% of hazards should be actually fixed or barricaded. And before it even goes into a system. So I think it's just getting out there and just educating people and, making people feel comfortable that their reports are valid.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your thoughts then on mandatory reporting? I'm sorry, I'll just clarify that a bit further. I was involved in an organisation and they put in a requirement that there had to be X number of take fives presented by every person every week. And I'm going to say it was 10 per person. I honestly don't recall what the number was. And it just became a farce. Is that your experience?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the best way to convince a manager that didn't work, a general manager, was the day that they all came on my desk and I looked at them, and the guy, just say today is the 27th, they'd filled them out for the 7 days coming. And they were sitting there. So I walked into his office and handed him the 7 days. And I said, can you go and have a chat with Brian, or whatever his name was? Can you go and have a chat with him and to find out if he can give me some lotto tickets, or, is he a time traveller? Like, what's going on? And I think just the look on his face, because it's a real, we tell you this, but now I've got some evidence just to show you that, is this effective? And I want you to make that decision. Is this effective? I'm happy to keep entering him into a system, but you need to go and have a chat and have a think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you handle that conversation? Safety is just common sense.
Exactly like that. It is common sense, but I think we do, like I said, we underestimate. Workers might not know the complexities of what we're working with, or they might not know the background around things. So it is common sense, but we need to ensure that you know what's common. Like, we need to make sure you know what we're actually talking about.
Understand why we're doing what we do, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What do you think makes a great safety leader?
I've had some really good safety bosses, really good ones. I've had one in lots of different.
What made them great? What made them great?
They brought us on the journey with them. So we're a team. And whether we've got a department of 180 of us in the safety team, or whether there's 3 of us, we're a team. We're on the same page. We've got the same values, and they care about what you're bringing to the meetings. And what I care about today is what they care about. So I think having that same sort of approach as well helps.
Yep, for sure. If we go back to some of your other roles where, you've been there as a safety advisor or whatever it may be, but not a manager, you don't actually have any authority. how do you actually lead? Because you do need to lead, don't you? Even as an advisor,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Yeah, I think just organically, like if you're in a meeting and someone asks your advice and you're there, you're ready, you give the advice. And I used to say to my safety advisors that have been in my team, we really want you guys to be part of that. Your stakeholder, whether it's your manager or departments and things, they need to go keys, wallet, phone, Jess. That's what I need today. So being respected in that sense that you are valued and your opinion's valued, I think that then can allow you to lead. And you've got that autonomy, and you can sort of go in and lead. Whereas I think if you're not in the room and you're not exposed to some decisions and some things like that, I think you're sort of don't get that opportunity to jump in and lead the ship.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, how do you support a team after a difficult incident?
Just be there for them, and understand that they're all going to go through it a little bit differently, and understand that uh, you know some people want to talk and some people don't, and it's just keep an eye on everybody. Reach out, touch base, make sure that they're traveling okay. And not everyone's going to be affected, and some people are going to be more affected than what we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, what's your favourite way to celebrate a success when it comes to safety?
Gosh, we don't do a lot of celebrating success, actually.
We don't, do we?
No.
Let's explore that for a second. What are we good at doing? We're good at knocking people. We're good at recognizing you didn't do that right. You didn't do that right.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we change that? How do we flip that?
Acknowledging, I think if we've done something well, and we've had a successful campaign and we've had no injuries or major issues, I think it just acknowledge it, let the workers know that they're a part of that.
Hmm. Do you think there's a difference between safety leadership and safety management?
Yes.
Go on.
Look, safety management.
I'm putting you under the pump today.
Yeah. Look, safety management. You've got a plan from the business. We're implementing the plan, and I think you're got to have the right resources. You're budgeting. You're going through your project management, all those types of things. But I think a safety leader can be anyone in the business, and I think they're the ones that really show up and take people through the why, and they're thinking about what can go wrong. They're thinking about the workers, and removing some of those assumptions and actually going and understanding workers. And I think that leader is probably a little bit different to a manager in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You talked earlier, or throughout this conversation, we've talked about, sort of juggling, multi-million-dollar fixes, for a multi-fatality event or a serious incident versus, long-term projects. How do you keep people engaged in your programs? Like, you can go run a risk workshop. You've identified this really big issue. It's a long-term fix. But then you've got the employees sitting there going, but you told us and nothing's happening. How do you get them? How do you keep them engaged for the long term?
That's probably something that we can do better at. And I think giving people feedback and getting people back together, if you're part of a project team, and communicating the progress and all those types of things, I think it's just sort of another extra thing that we have to do, and it's probably not the important thing that we have to do, so it can get forgotten. But I think it is important to make sure that we're keeping communicating what the progress is, what we're doing, just to keep people engaged.
Yeah, for sure. My understanding is you facilitate mental health first aid training. Is that correct?
I do.
Let's talk a bit about that for a minute. Let's talk about mental health and well-being. How do we integrate that into safety programs? Everyone seems to be talking about psychosocial and all those sort of things now. It's almost, dare I say, buzzword now. If you're not talking about it, you're not with the in crowd. How do we integrate that sort of stuff into existing programs?
I think it's understanding. So we've got our list of psychosocial hazards that Safe Work have put together, and I think it's understanding whether or not those things are activities that we do or whether they're consequences of the activities we do. So I think again, going back to the what's the definition and what does it mean? And because it's the cause
Yeah.
and effect. Sometimes we go, well, we don't actually have that here, and you go, well, hang on, we've got some activities here that could cause that, and they're like, oh, okay, that changes it. So I think without reinventing wheels, we do have a lot of processes and systems in businesses that are sort of managing these things. So I think it's about just formalising those things, drawing the line between them to say, hey, we do have things in place for workers that are exposed to traumatic events. We do have some things in place. We might want to improve that a little bit, but I think to either go one extreme, we need to change everything, or another extreme, it's too hard, let's ignore it. I think we've already got things in place. Just acknowledge what the aspects are and what we've already got, and then improve on those things.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I like that. Do you think we're at risk with psychosocial of diluting the importance of it? Like, everyone's talking about it. Everyone's got these new butte controls and software and books and everything else to fix it. Are we at risk of diluting it?
Yeah, a little bit. And I think, again, just to overcomplicate it, like we have in other safety systems where we've overcomplicated it to a point where we can't actually explain what a psychosocial hazard is anymore, because there's too much information, too much input.
Absolutely. Look, I put out an article this morning. It was talking about how we use ICANN for psychosocial investigations. And lo and behold, we don't change the process. Yes, we might interview slightly differently and work with kid gloves at times, but the ICANN process itself actually doesn't change. You don't need to change it to be able to investigate it. It's basically an all hazards type of tool.
Yeah. Same with
I
the
think
risk
people
risk
need to
assessment.
recognise that.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. What technology sort of concerns you now when we talk safety? Is there a sort of technology that sort of got your ears pricked up at the moment and you think, oh, this could be interesting? Are we talking, I don't know, self-driving vehicles? Are we talking about remote controlled mine vehicles? Are we talking AI? What's on your radar?
Yeah, look, I think there's lots of technologies that's enabling, and whether or not that's being enabling to collect more data, to improve productivity, or to investigate incidents better. But I do think they need to be risk assessed and go through a change management process as well. And we did have some conversations, I think it was a few years ago now, when they were talking about vehicle interactions and all of the 8 levels of controls or things like that, where they were then overwhelming operators. There was too many screens to look at. There was way too much going on. So I think consultation, again, going back to our legislation, talking with workers, making sure that they understand these technologies. But I think the one that jumped out at me the other day was the one I don't know where I saw it, doing incident investigations and AI. So I'd be really keen to see how that works. And yeah, whether or not we've got systems that can analyze 15 years worth of data, and whether that data was correct when it went into a system, whether it was a hazard or a near miss or an incident, and then whether or not we can analyze that intelligently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the AI one's an interesting one. I absolutely think, it has a role to play somewhere in it. And I think you're right. Things like data analysis, that sort of stuff, incredibly powerful, and can probably do stuff that we can't even imagine. What worries me about AI is it's not a replacement. AI can't read the emotions in an interview. And AI can just spit out questions that we ask, but you need that human side to be able to understand the emotions and other things that are at play. And I think people need to understand their limitations there. You've got to be really careful. Your risk assessment comment you made earlier is also an interesting one. If we talk mining vehicles, I mean, a lot of mine sites are now moving to remote controlled vehicles, being operated however many kilometres away from the actual mine site itself. Totally different risk, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And
I don't think people recognise that.
yeah, and I think the cybersecurity and those data risks are really prominent there too. And there's just so much backup required, and so many systems and networks and things like that required for running those systems. But I think it's amazing what they're doing, especially in some really high risk activities and removing people. And I think that's our goal, right? It's to eliminate that risk of injury and fatality. But yeah, it just introduces some new things.
Yeah. I think from a risk management perspective and safety management perspective, I was looking at some stuff a few years ago. It was wearable technology. So it was doing body monitoring, everything from temperature to heart rates and all that sort of stuff. And it was giving us insights that we just haven't had before. And I'm fascinated by that. It's fine to go do risk assessment on someone operating in a confined space, but now put the wearable technology on while they're in a 40-degree temperature or hotter, doing strenuous work, that sort of stuff. Suddenly we've got access to stuff we never had before. And to pick up on what you said, we need to risk assess it. There's suddenly stuff we're seeing that we didn't have. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I think those wearables are fascinating. And I think it's just having that nice relationship between privacy and, what people are willing to contribute to data in a workplace. Yeah. So convincing them that it's a control.
For sure. How do you think safety can attract a more diverse talent? In your experience, is it very male dominated? Is it younger person dominated? Older person dominated? What's your experiences?
So I've worked across so many different industries where I couldn't say it was more older or younger workers, but I do think the younger workers that really want to get into the field and they're really passionate, I think they can get chewed up and spat out. And, they've gone and given 10 years to university and a career only to go and have a complete career change because of having bad experiences. So I don't know. I think the giving people those micro skills and that knowledge. And look, I've said it before, we've got safety people. So here's WHS, OHS, and then hang on, depending on what business you're in, now you're training, your safety and training. Oh, and your environment now too. And next week you're going to be health. And then now we've got psychosocial. So we're going to have people with a wellbeing hat on. And, we've got compliance, security. I've had all the letters in my titles, and I've never been given training on any of it in any organisation that I've worked for. Hang on, you want me to look after health? Where's my training? It's all well and good to have a H in my title, but what? Yeah, so I think stop overloading the safety people. Let them get actually good at the frontline safety, and give them the training and the skills to do the other letters of the alphabet, especially if they're responsible for it.
Now, I will say, absolutely. I will say, hand on heart, for anyone listening, I have not preloaded Jes to say that. It's something that I've talked a lot about. I said to Jeremy and Callie, I use the analogy of, plate spinning at a circus. We're going to do a bit of health. We're spinning this plate. That's a bit of enviro. This is a bit of quality. That's a bit of training, business continuity, COVID. It's got to end. Now we're putting on stuff like psychosocial. Now, psychosocial, as you would appreciate, being a mental health first aid provider, it's an incredibly specialised area. And we're going to go give it to the little pimply kid who's got his Cert 4 in OHS.
Yeah.
That scares me.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying for a minute it doesn't belong in health and safety, not at all. But I think you are 100% spot on. We've got to give the people the tools and the resources to be able to manage that. And we can't just keep loading crap onto people and expecting it not to fail. Ironic, You're a risk management person. What's the risk? What's the risk in doing that? It's crazy.
And look, I think one of my bugbears over the last 6 or 7 years is, risk management, enterprise risk management, strategic risk management, all those types of things. You're going out and you're doing a bit of study and you're spending years doing bow ties and catastrophic risk management. And, we've got people that just got risk added to their title in that same time frame. So because I've seen that a lot across the safety roles there, safety and risk advisors, safety and risk coordinators. And you're just like, it's different. It's risk. It's not safe. Like yes, there's safety risk, but it is a very different. One's very proactive, one's very reactive. So I think give people the right skills and tools to be able to fulfil those roles that with the titles that we've given them.
Yeah, absolutely. What's been your proudest professional moment you've had over your career?
I've had a lot, and I think being able to execute projects, I think, is one of my biggest, only because of the feedback that you get, that a lot of people can talk, a lot of people can think and strategize and spin wheels, but to actually execute and have something finished. So I think I've done that a few times. And I've failed a lot of different things as well. But I think being able to execute like a critical risk program has been a good achievement. But one of my achievements was very, very, very long time ago, and this was probably 20 years ago when I had a supervisor. I was reading the data, I was entering, data into the safety management system, and I just noticed a worker had sort of a few smaller incidents, but then sort of a larger incident. And I was sort of reading that, and I went to the manager, the supervisor, and said, "Hey, can you go and talk to that guy? I don't know what's going on, but he's been with us 6-7 years, hasn't had an incident, and in the last 3 months we've had 3." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, Jess, we're here to dig, we're here to bog, we're here to make money, and you want us to go and cuddle people." And I was like, "Please, please." So I think it's like really putting my heart on the sleeve, like, please, please, please. And I think by the end of the shift, the supervisor came into my office, shut the door. He was crying, and I was really taken aback. I was like, "What is going on?" And he said, "Mate, he was suicidal. His missus broke up with him 3 months ago, and he was so upset with himself because he said, how come you noticed that? You don't even know him. You were just reading data." And I was like, I don't know. I've just always had that bit of intuition. And I think having the courage to be able to go and fight for that, say, I've got a feeling, let me go and get some data. Let me go and find out more information. But I think that's probably one of my biggest achievements is actually speaking up in when I've got a feeling.
Yeah, awesome. I think there's a lot to be said for the spidey senses. When the spidey senses are triggered, there's normally something there's a reason. Yeah. How do you find working in risk? How do you find your view outside of work of risk? Do you look at things differently? Like, do you look at recreational activities, for example, bungee jumping, caving, whatever it may be, whatever the event may be? Do you look at things differently with your risk hat now?
I think I always have. And my poor children, they all have a risk brain. God bless them. I feel sad because sometimes I'm like, just go and do the thing. It's okay. But I do have all 3 of mine just think about it. They think about, what can happen here? What can happen there? And even from littlies, they were like that. But I think it wasn't being in risk management roles that gave me that. I think I was drawn to risk management roles because I had a risk brain. And I think if you speak to my parents, I was probably like that as a very young child as well, like always thinking about what can happen, what can go wrong, or curious. I was always curious. And I think that's probably one of the things that made me enjoy these roles so much, is because it's probably something in my personality. But to answer your question, I don't really do high-risk activities.
I'll come back to it. I'll save that question for the rapid fire section. If you're to look at your career moving forward, is there a goal or a dream project that you still want to achieve in your role in safety and risk?
Yeah, there is. And I think I'm just really focused on tools for workers, for frontline workers, to really simplify the beast that we've created over the last 40, 50 years. And I'm really passionate about just stripping away some of that and getting workers to know what their hazards are. What do you do if things go wrong? How do you implement that? How do you install it? How do you monitor it? And really focused on that, I think.
Cool. All right. Thank you for your time. I'm going to move into the rapid fire. Let's try and get to know. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the really important stuff now. What makes you tick? And then we've got a couple of other questions we're going to close up with. You're ready for this one? First thing that comes to mind. Are you a sweet or savoury person?
Savoury.
Okay. What's favourite savoury?
Probably cheese and bickies.
We're not afraid to tackle the big issues here.
Probably cheese and bickies and salamis.
Yeah, crackers.
Yeah.
Can't go past it. I agree. Is that your favourite comfort food?
Yes, I'd say. Yeah.
Cool. Is there a favourite quote or saying that you've used throughout your life?
Yes. When all is said and done, more is said than done.
I like that. What's that mean for you?
It just reminds me that there's a time to stop talking and to move into acting.
Yeah, I like that, and I think that's a good one for life. But I think that's really good for safety and businesses, leaders in general, isn't it? I like that one. First concert you ever went to?
Coldplay.
Okay. When and where? Do you remember?
It was about 10 years ago, I want to say, and it was in Brisbane at Suncorp, and it was amazing.
Cool, cool. One word your friends would use to describe you.
Wow. Passionate.
Okay, that's good. I like that. I like that a lot. How do you unwind? You talked about driving, but
Yep.
what's
Look,
what's a hobby? What's an interest?
true crime.
Go on. Go on. Is there particular things you like? Is there things, what are you watching or reading at the moment in relation to that?
So I like reading all of the historic, the books, and I've got lots of books on Australian jails and all the old stories around the jails and, the old criminals. And yeah, I don't know. I love it.
There is, talking about that for a second, I've watched quite a few true crime shows myself, and gee, some of our jails we've had in Australia have been pretty, they've been brutal, for want of a better word.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, not where I want to be, that's for sure. Is there a skill you wish you had?
I think yes, and I think I say it, but more jokingly, but there's probably a lot of truth in it. But I wish I had the like audacity, like in that unbridled confidence. Like I'm probably still a little bit shy and a little bit reserved, but I do wish I was a lot more comfortable just putting myself out there.
Yeah, fair call. We're working on that today with the podcast. Well done.
Thank you.
Favorite childhood TV show?
I did like me a little Roger Ramjet back in the days, and the Astro Boys, and all the cartoons that we used to watch as kids.
You're showing your age. Most people wouldn't know what they
Yeah.
are, but I do.
Iconic.
I came out of my bedroom a couple of weeks ago, and my oldest daughter was watching Thunderbirds, and she'd heard me talking
Wow.
about it, but never seen it, and now she's obsessed with it.
Yeah.
She loves it. Favorite holiday destination?
I do like a cruise. I like you don't have to do anything. You just have your tag and everything's cooked. And I do like a cruise. I think that's probably my favorite holiday.
Best cruise you've done so far was where? What'd you do?
I actually took the kids on a Christmas cruise last year, and we did Namia, Lifu, 7 days, and had Christmas Day on the boat, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be different. Time and money and everything else, kids, was no objective to it. Where would you want to go? Favorite holiday destination to do? What's on the bucket list?
I'd love to go to Italy and Scotland, and I love history and culture. So I basically think anywhere that's got a good museum or got a good story would be amazing.
Yep. Yeah, fair cool. Favorite music genre or band?
Top 40, everything.
Okay, so pretty diverse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. What was the very first job you had? First one ever?
First job ever was in a cafe. I was flipping hamburgers.
Okay. What'd you learn from that?
I learned that we just got given all the horrible jobs because we were young workers, and we had to do all the cleaning for about $3 an hour.
Yeah, fair call. What's one thing you can't live without?
My car.
Yeah, fair call.
Have wheels will travel.
I think I know the answer to it because, yeah, fair call. The last question, I think I know the answer because I can hear it in the background. You're a dog or a cat person?
I am a dog person, and they're being a little bit naughty at the moment. I've got dash hounds.
That's right. That's fine. Last one. Okay, fair cool. Who's the most inspiring person you've ever met?
I've met so many amazing, inspiring people. Yeah. There's probably a lot I'd like to meet. But in terms of ones that I've met, I don't know. Probably one of my old general managers from an old job I had.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. I'm probably similar. I've got some people from a professional work environment that are very inspiring, and then I've got others outside of work that are up there as well. So no, I get that. Totally get it. All right, last question. Tell us a little bit about your business. Tell us about it. What do you do? give us the name. How do we find you?
Yeah. So I am Arana Skills Centre, and I do a lot of training for mental health first aid, safety wise ICAM training, and I do New South Wales HSR training, and then everything in between, so confined space, heights, first aid, and sorry, my dogs are just come on.
No, it's all right. I can hear it. It's all right. We're nearly done.
Yeah, and then I've got another part of my business where I do a lot of consulting. So that's in risk management. So that's in
Yep.
doing bow ties, critical controls. She's had enough.
How do we find you? Web address?
www.aranaskillscentre.com.
Awesome. No worries. Thank you, Jess, for joining us. Really enjoyed it. It's different to get, I guess, that non-traditional safety experience and insight. It's certainly different. Appreciate it. Thank you. Very last thing I'm going to ask you, what's the one bit of advice you would give new safety professionals or those looking to get into it?
Yeah, I would say do it. It's amazing. It is such a fulfilling career, but take it easy. You know, don't try and do too much too quickly, and get to understand the business, get to understand the people, and don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I like all of that. I 100% agree with all of it. Thank you, Jess. Thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I've put you on the spot a fair bit. I hope that wasn't too hard for you. To everyone listening, please let us know your thoughts. Please hit the subscribe. Please share with your friends and so forth that you think might be interested. So that's another episode of Conversations for Change done and dusted. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Luke.